On March 30th, 1981, the unthinkable almost happened. President Ronald Reagan, just 69 days into his first term, was shot by John Hinckley Jr. outside the Washington Hilton Hotel. The bullet pierced Reagan's lung, and for a few terrifying moments, the nation feared for the life of its new leader. But miraculously, Reagan survived the attack, recovering and continuing his presidency. But what if it hadn't ended that way? What if, on that fateful day, the bullet had struck a fatal target? What if President Reagan had died in 1981, leaving the United States without its newly elected leader? In this alternate timeline, we explore how the course of American history might have dramatically shifted. Like and subscribe for more. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell for more history documentaries. The early George H.W. Bush presidency. Had President Reagan been assassinated, the immediate question would have been, who would take his place? Under the U.S. Constitution, Vice President George H.W. Bush would have assumed the office. But in this reality, Bush would have been thrust into the presidency with far less political preparation than Reagan had in 1980. While Bush had been Reagan's running mate, he was not as well-versed in the political intricacies of the time, and his transition into the role of commander-in-chief would have been a baptism by fire. Bush, a former CIA director, had a wealth of experience in foreign policy, but his domestic policy chops were less developed. With the shock of Reagan's death, Bush would have had to quickly define his own leadership style. His immediate challenges would have included maintaining the Reagan coalition, particularly among conservative Republicans who had been so loyal to Reagan. Would he have been able to live up to the expectations set by the man who was beloved by the right wing? Bush's personal style was much more reserved compared to Reagan's charm, which could have impacted the way he connected with the public. His presidency, instead of being marked by the optimism and charisma that Reagan embodied, could have been defined by a sense of unease and instability. The new president, while respected, might have struggled to maintain the same level of public confidence. Would George H.W. Bush have won the 1984 election? Reagan's popularity had been a key factor in his landslide victory over Walter Mondale in 1984. But with Reagan's sudden death, would Bush have had the same political advantage? The question of whether Bush could have won in 1984 is a significant one. Without Reagan's strong public approval ratings, Bush would have needed to distinguish himself as more than just a caretaker president. His challenge would have been even greater since he would have lacked Reagan's natural charisma, which was crucial for mobilizing voters. It's possible that the American electorate, still mourning the loss of Reagan, might have turned to Mondale, who had a solid political record and could present himself as a stabilizing figure in a time of national uncertainty. The Democratic Party, emboldened by the sudden shift in leadership, might have found a path to victory, pushing Bush into a more difficult political battle. The impact on the Cold War and U.S.-Soviet relations. The death of Ronald Reagan would have sent shockwaves through the Cold War dynamics. Reagan's firm stance against the Soviet Union and his push for a military buildup were key components of the strategy that led to the eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union. Under George H.W. Bush, the U.S. would likely have continued its tough stance, but Bush lacked Reagan's personal rapport with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, a relationship that was vital in easing Cold War tensions. Reagan had a personal charisma that allowed him to bond with Gorbachev, which helped facilitate significant arms reduction agreements, including the INF Treaty. Without Reagan's influence, it's possible that the pace of arms reduction could have slowed, and the process of détente may have been delayed. Additionally, Reagan's death would have been a severe blow to the morale of pro-democracy forces around the world, especially in Eastern Europe. While Bush was committed to containing Soviet influence, his style of diplomacy was far more cautious than Reagan's. As a result, the momentum for reform within the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe could have been stunted, potentially delaying the fall of the Berlin Wall and the eventual reunification of Germany. Reagan's vision of a Europe whole and free might not have come to fruition in the same way. The domestic impact, economic policy, and social issues. Domestically, Reagan's death would have significantly altered the trajectory of the American economy. Reagan's supply-side economic policies were designed to cut taxes, reduce government regulation, and stimulate business growth. Under Bush, these policies would have likely remained in place, but Bush may have been more cautious about further tax cuts and government spending. Without Reagan's strong public backing, it's possible that Bush would have had a harder time pushing through the same level of tax reforms. On social issues, Reagan was known for his conservative stance on topics like abortion, gay rights, and school prayer. Bush, while certainly a conservative, did not have the same ideological fervor on these issues. The pro-life movement, for instance, would have faced a more subdued push from the White House. The rise of the religious right during the Reagan years may not have been as influential under a Bush presidency, leading to less aggressive anti-abortion legislation and potentially more moderate stances on social issues. The political landscape and the rise of new leaders. The death of Reagan in 1981 would have reshaped the political landscape in ways that were difficult to predict. Many of Reagan's protégés, such as future figures like Newt Gingrich, might not have risen to prominence in the same way, since their ascendancy was tied to Reagan's success. The Republican Party would have needed to find a new leader to rally behind, and it's possible that a younger, more dynamic figure could have emerged to carry the torch. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party, while energized by Reagan's sudden death, could have been faced with internal strife as it tried to recover from the 1980 defeat. Figures like Ted Kennedy or Gary Hart might have been pushed into the forefront, but the lack of Reagan as a unifying force might have led to a prolonged struggle for political dominance between the two parties. Conclusion: a different America. In this alternate timeline, the loss of Ronald Reagan in 1981 would have led to a drastically different political and social landscape for the United States. George H.W. Bush would have faced an uphill battle, both in terms of maintaining Reagan's coalition and establishing his own legacy. The Cold War might have played out more slowly, and the economic and social reforms of the Reagan years would have been tempered by Bush's more cautious, pragmatic approach. The impact on global geopolitics, particularly in terms of the Soviet Union and Germany, could have delayed or reshaped the eventual end of the Cold War. Ultimately, Reagan's death would have left an indelible mark on American history, altering not just the course of U.S. politics, but the very fabric of the 20th century. While it's impossible to predict every detail, one thing is certain: the world would have looked very different without the great communicator. Thanks for watching.